So it was a huge weekend for 3-year-old stakes. We're going to get to all of it as the Derby fever starts to really heat up here. But the biggest story, at least in these parts, was Hades winning the Holy Bull Stakes. And we're obviously very thrilled for a DJ Stable and for Joe Orsino, who we're going to talk to in a little bit. That was a really awesome race just because, like, fierceness came to him at the top of the stretch, and you thought he was going to run right on by, and Hades stiff-armed him, opened up again, galloped out huge. First of all, I want to shout out you guys for running him in that race. I think a lot of people probably saw that fierceness was pointing to that race and thought, oh, let me go somewhere else. But this is why it pays to run your horses and take a shot, because you never know, especially with a horse coming off a layoff. John, just give me your unbiased opinions of Hades winning the Holy Bull.
I'll do my best, Jeff. I will. First of all, thank you so much to all the fans and the listeners who reached out before and post race celebration. I was overwhelmed with just how many people who watched the show, listened to the show, who were wishing us well, pre-race and then post-race. It was just extraordinary, Joe. And I know you and I talk about all the time how much we appreciate our listeners and our subscribers, but I was overwhelmed with support and just how much people, care about the horses that we represent, that you represent. It was extraordinary. That being said, yeah, running against a champ, definitely was something that we talked about and was concerning, because the horse being fierceness was 2 for 3, and the 2 races that he won were extraordinary. He broke his maiden very impressively, and then had a kind of a clunker race, and then came back in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and just ran everybody off their feet, went gate to wire, and ran an impressive race. But as we've spoken about before on the show, it is not an easy ask to get your 2-year-old champ up to speed and back in race form as a 3-year-old. And, we talked about it with Jaywalk. We talked about it with Wonder Wheel. And it's not a given. It's not a guarantee that they're going to come back to that level and that they're going to develop to the next level. And that's why we thought that was the day. Holy Bull Day was the right race for us to take a shot at the champ and to see what would happen. Coming to the paddock, I think we were third choice. It was overwhelming how many people were interested in betting on fierceness. I think that Team Rapoli, I'm not exaggerating, had 70 people in the paddock. They literally had to, the paddock is that big circular area where the horses all come in, and we're all assigned our post numbers. There's a little sign that you stand next to. So they were the 7 hole, and there was a horse in the 8 hole, and then there was nobody, Joe, on the other side of the oval, from 9 to 12. And that's where Team Rapoli set up, was right there. So we were number 1, which was next to where they were. And rumor has it on good sources that when Johnny Velasquez came out to ride fierceness, that Commissioner Rapoli had a few words for him and basically said something along the lines of, "This is going to be the easiest race you've ever ridden. It's a paid work." Those words were uttered. They were uttered. Not that the horses knew, not that anybody else knew, but man, it definitely got under my skin a little bit. But be that as it may, the important message on this race is you have to run the race. You can't be afraid to take shots. You can't be afraid to, is this going to hurt my win percentage? And again, it's easy for me to say that now because we won. Mm-hmm. But, all the pundits didn't pick us. The pundits were all, and they didn't pick anybody else other than fierceness. I mean, it was like the fierceness show, and everyone was waiting for that race to come up. I couldn't be prouder of Hades. I couldn't be prouder of Joe Orsino. I'm so happy for him because he's one of the top trainers, over the decades. He's won, Triple Crown races. He's won Breeders' Cup races. And for him to have a horse on the campaign is just, it's so heartwarming for me because I've known Joe for 35, 40 years. And it was just extraordinary to see a guy of that talent and that skill level back on the on the main campus again and in front of everybody. And to me, that was the big takeaway from the race. Yeah, it was an important Derby prep, and there's lots of road between now and the Kentucky Derby. But just for Joe Orsino and his team to be involved and to have a horse again on the campaign, that was really important for us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, because I would love to know how he came to train that horse, because you guys have moved a lot of your stock to Mark Casse, but I do see you have horses with Joe every once in a while, so I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about how that happened, how that came together. And John, the other part of the story of the Holy Bull, as much as we're afraid to not make the story about you for 5 seconds, is fierceness, and the fact that he flopped at odds on, and the fact that now I think has a little bit of a reputation. I don't want to be too hard on him because he's only run 4 times, but a little bit of a reputation for being faint-hearted, because the 2 times that he was able to just get loose and run in the clear and kind of just do his own thing, he ran away to huge wins. The 2 times he had a little bit of adversity, the sloppy track and the Champagne, he didn't get away all that great. And then this time when he had a horse eyeball him, he backed up and he retreated pretty badly and was like a well-beaten third. Like there was no, it's one thing if like he gets into a fight and then the other horse just, out fights him barely down to the wire, because like that's a 50-50 thing. He spit it. Basically, he spit the bit at the 8th pole or the 16th pole at the latest. And, Chad's horse ran by him too and ended up getting second. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to be too hard on him, but John, that's got to be a factor going forward. Maybe next time they just send him and, hope that he gets loose on the lead, because this to me is a detriment to otherwise a very talented horse.
And he is, and I'm glad you said that last part, because he is very talented. Look, he's the champ. There's a reason why he won the Eclipse Award. It was because of his performances when he did win, and he was just super impressive. Joe. Again, that being said, I am very confident that as much as Todd Pletcher and Team Rapoli wanted to win the Holy Bull, that was not the most important race that they have, slated for him in the upcoming months. They really, I'm sure that they thought this was going to be kind of an easier win, an easier race at least. And I am guarantee you that he was not cranked to the nth degree to win the Holy Bull. No offense to the Holy Bull, but it's a grade 3. It's a stepping stone. It's a prep for down the road of what's more important. I would be more concerned if they run fierceness in the Fountain of Youth and the Florida Derby, and he kind of throws in a lackluster race. Then I would be concerned about, well, what's his future? And was he just kind of a flash in the pan and a very talented 2-year-old? But as we've always said, it is difficult to get to the next level, especially when everybody else is, growing and developing as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody's going to be ducking him next time. Now kind of the word is out a little bit that if you go eyeball to eyeball with him, he might not have that extra punch. But like I said, he's still a lightly raced horse, very talented. Like, obviously don't want to write off a horse who has that much ability and is still has the potential to make some major noise later in the year. But that wasn't the only 3-year-old race this weekend. We had a pretty good round of preps and 2 really impressive horses in particular in Mystic Dan, who romped in the Southwest at Oaklawn. That was just one of those races where he was like zooming over that slop. And I would just wonder if it was like he just handled the track better than everybody else did. Was the rail good? Because like he looked like he was shot out of a cannon in the stretch of that race. Got a 101 buyer, won it like 11-1 or so. And then the horse that I think is, to me, the top 3-year-old in America right now is Nysos, who won at the Bob Lewis out at Santa Anita. And shout out to West Point Scatify, who I thought ran a very good third in that race. He had only run once before. He had a 6-furlong maiden win to his name, stretched out to 2 turns, stepped into stakes company, set a fast pace from the outside draw. He ended up getting beaten like 5 or 6 lengths by a really nice horse. He got a 91 buyer. So he's got an 84 and a 91 now in his first 2 races. Only $120,000 purchase at the Fasig Mid-Atlantic sale. So similar purchase price to Hades. So I thought he ran really well. But Nysos was like, stumbled at the start, and it was just never in doubt and just cruised home. And then to me, like, and this was the conversation after the race, was like the whole Baffert and Churchill Downs thing. Like, I don't want to get into the weeds of that again, but it is going to be kind of a bummer if he runs off the screen like that again in the Santa Anita Derby or whatever, and he's not in the Kentucky Derby. I'm not going to say there's an asterisk, but there's going to be a question over whether or not this is good for the race that the best 3-year-old in America isn't in it. John, what did you think?
Yeah, Nysos was emphatically the most impressive 3-year-old that ran on a jam-packed day of 4 Kentucky Derby preps. And I say that owning one of them. So you know that from a very biased opinion, I was really impressed with Nysos. He's bred to run 2 turns. He's bred to run all day. I love the cross of Nyquist over a Bernardini mare. He looks the part. He had it in cruise control the entire way. The way that Nysos won is, I think, the way that everyone anticipated Fierceness to run. I think everyone anticipated that horse was going to just be in cruise control, let the speed go out there, and then make a big run down the stretch. And that's exactly what Nysos did. He handled it. He went 2 turns for the first time. He ran against a solid group, and certainly, Joe, that is the horse that is number 1 on the hit parade. And yeah, we beat the champ in Fierceness, but I would not want to run against Nysos right now. I mean, I'd be happy to run against him, hopefully in a Triple Crown race when the money ratchets up, and you should, run against the best of the best of the crop. But man, he was impressive. He was super impressive. And you mentioned Scatify, your horse that ran 3rd. Again, if buyer numbers are equal everywhere across the board, technically he ran a better buyer number than we did to win the Holy Bull.
I mean, it's right there, and it's I think you get extra credit for turning back the 2-year-old champion. But yeah, especially because that was only his second start, and he only had that 1 6 furlong race. I thought everybody was very, very stoked to see him run as well as he did. So we're very excited about him.
I was also excited to see. Sorry to interrupt you, but how about the fact that 3 out of the 4 prep races were won by what I would call unfashionable pedigrees and relatively less expensive horses than what usually wins these races. And I couldn't be happier for the 3 trainers that represented those horses, because Butch Reed and Joe Orsino and Kenny McPeek, to an extent, they don't get the kind of notoriety that a Baffert or a Chad Brown or a Pletcher or Asmussen. There's 5 or 6 or 10 trainers that Brad Cox that you would mention ahead of McPeek, Orsino, and Butch Reed. And it's no reflection on their ability to train a horse into a good race, but it was refreshing for me to see those guys win preps for the Derby and to continue to have the dream for another 4, 6, 8 weeks, and maybe even have representation in the Kentucky Derby. So I think it's good for the industry that some of these trainers have horses, some of these families that, I don't mean human families, I mean equine families that are represented now in the winner's circle in these races. And the fact that really none of the other 3, other than Nysos, none of the 3 you would say were budget bursters. That a lot of people in the industry can afford to buy any of those 3 horses that won the races other than the Lewis. I think that's great for the industry.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Because then it gives the impression that you just gotta be smarter than someone rather than just have more money than someone. Right. That's, to me, is a big thing. What keeps people coming back is that you can find these horses at lower levels in the auction, or falling through the cracks in the auction, who you just see something in them that maybe not everybody else saw when they're chasing after the $1 million yearlings and 2-year-olds. I mean, someone I really twice now, John. You get 2 interruptions.
Someone I really, really respect once told me that the horse industry is a meritocracy.
Who was that genius?
I don't know. Was that me? This time it was you, Joe. This time it was.
Whoever it is should have a statue and have that chiseled on the statue.
Meritocracy.
There.
And I'm happy that I actually pronounced it correctly.
You did. Very good. You're coming along. Listen, one other thing that I think that I agree with you about about having smaller trainers have big horses on the road to the Kentucky Derby. I just hope that the Derby broadcast is not all about who's not there. And I worry that there's going to be a lot of good stories and it's all going to be about who's not there. It does make it for an interesting setup in terms of the Preakness and the Belmont. Mm-hmm. If you do have these Baffert monsters that are not able to run the Derby, I think you might even have smaller fields in the Preakness than you have had in recent years. If you know that there's a new shooter who might have been the Kentucky Derby favorite, was waiting for that. But that's a discussion for another day. Lots of great 3-year-old racing still to come. And if this weekend was any indication, it's going to be a great Derby season.